Radhe Radhe everyone. Welcome to our Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita session. Nitinji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Amritavani ji, thank you. Radhe Radhe Vijay ji for a wonderful, beautiful session. Aham Krishnasya Krite Pushpam Phalam Cha Dadami. I hope I got it right. You can say Bahu Samichinam to me.
Bahu Samichinam.
Namo Namaha Dhanyavada Punamidama. Radhe Radhe, very warm good morning, good evening to all of you in today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Hope you had a wonderful weekend and a great start to your new week. Excited to be back. Hope the feeling is mutual. So let's get started. We are on chapter 4. We started chapter 4. Today we will cover verse 2. We'll see how far we can go in that verse. And we'll also introduce the Mahatmeya, the importance, significance, or the glory of chapter 4 as well. So with that, we can get started with our opening prayers. And let me share my screen for that. Amritavani, is my audio all right?
Yes, Nitinji, your audio. I can hear it well.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Dallas weather, you know, works, and before when you start thinking it's working fine, it may start. Just let me know if it stops cooperating.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, thank you. All right, let's get started then. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanurmardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe, morning, good evening, everyone, once again. So let's get started. We are on chapter 4, verse 2. I'm going to recite it, and if you feel confident and if you've practiced it, please feel free to follow. Raise your hand afterwards. So let's get started then. Evam parampara praptam evam rajarshayo vidu sakale neha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa. Okay, over to you, Amritavani ji.
Yes, we have a few hands right now. Shatoshi, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale nehe mahata yogo nashtah parantap.
Very nice, Ashutoshi. Radhe Radhe.
Udayji, you can go ahead, please. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe ji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Evam parampara praptam imam rajashayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa.
Thank you, Udayji. Radhe Radhe. Very nice.
Indu Sharma ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe everybody.
Radhe Radhe.
Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshyo viduhu sakale neh mehta yogo nashta parantapah.
Very nice, Induji. Where are you joining us from?
Houston.
Houston. Welcome to hear you. Let's take a few more hands.
Akshata Ramakrishna Panji. Akshata ji, Radhe Radhe.
New ones.
Radhe Radhe.
Akshata ji, Radhe Radhe.
Evam parampara praptam प्राप्तमिमं राजर्षयोः विदुः स काले नेह महता योगो नष्टः परं तपः.
Thank you very much, Chitaji. All right, we can take maybe 2 or 3 more hands and then we'll get started. Do we have any
Riyaji?
newcomers? Please.
Riyaji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Riyaji.
Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
एवं परम्परा प्राप्तम् इमं राजर्षयो विदुः सकालेन महता योगो नष्ट परन्तप.
Thank you very much. Radhe Radhe. Okay, maybe 2 more hands and then we'll get started.
Sure. Let me give it to Dinesh Ji then. Radhe Radhe, Dinesh Ji.
Radhe Radhe, Dinesh Ji.
Radhe Radhe. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarsayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nasta parantapa. Radhe
Very
Radhe.
nice, Dinesh Ji. Radhe Radhe. Thank you very much.
I'll give it to Sam Ji.
Sam Ji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe
Radhe
Radhe.
Radhe, Sam Ji.
Evam prampata praptam evam rajrashyo vido sakale neh mehta yogo nasta parantapa. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you very much, Sam Ji. Very nice. All right, we can take maybe 2 more. I can see hands. So let's cover 2 more and then we'll get started.
Okay, then I'll give it to Sumesh Ji. Thank you for waiting. Please go ahead, Sumesh Ji.
Radhe
Radhe
Radhe,
Radhe
Ji.
Nitin ji, Radhe Radhe everyone. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nastah parantapa.
Very
Radhe
nice.
Radhe.
Thank you very much, Sumesh Ji. All right. Last one.
Okay, Praghi Kurana Ji.
Radhe Radhe, Praghi Ji.
राधे राधे. एवं परम्परा प्राप्तम् इमं राजर्षयो विदुः सकाले नेह महता योगो नष्टः परन्तपः.
Very nice. This word shloka has, let's get started, word Mahata. Mahata means great. God is known as Mahata Mahan, bigger than the biggest. And Ananyonyan, I think I forgot the exact word, and the smaller than the smallest. Anyways, let's get started. If you didn't get a chance, we'll prioritize you tomorrow. Amritavani ji has a very strong memory, photographic memory, so she'll remember. All right. Evam, thus, parampara, in a continuous tradition, praptam, received, imam, the science, Raja Rishaya, the saintly kings, Vidu, understood that Kalena, with the long passage of time, Iha, in this world, Mahata, great, Yoga, the science of yoga, Nashta, lost, Parantapa, Arjun, the scorcher of foes. Short translation: O subduer of enemies, the saintly kings thus received the science of yoga in a continuous tradition. But with the long passage of time, it was lost to the world. So we did look at that parampara, starting with Narayan, God himself, and how it keeps on getting passed from generations to generations, starting with sun god Vivaswan, and it comes through oral tradition, Shruti Praman, which is the most perfect Praman, which does not suffer from the deficiencies of the other two kind of Praman, which are Pratyaksh Praman and Anuman Praman, which is what the modern science is based off. So let's get started. Today we will have a little bit of a story time, couple of stories. So the glories of chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. So it is from Padma Puran. So let's talk about the glory. It's a story. So there was a town, Kashi, we all know, in Banaras, right? And there is a Vishwanath temple there. So the way story goes, like Lord Vishnu, in Padma Puran it is mentioned, he's telling Lakshmi the story. And he says that I'm going to describe the glories of the 4th chapter, how important it is, so that we all can feel good. We are reading his 4th chapter. Okay, and what is that importance is what we are going to see how the story unfolds of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So what he says is that on the bank of this river Ganges, as you can see, are you able to see the screen? Banaras, Kashi town. Okay, yeah.
Yes,
So in
yes.
this town, there was a temple, Vishwanath temple, and there used to be a great saint whose name was Bharata. And with greatest devotion, every day he would recite the 4th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And previously in one of his pilgrimages, he was taking a pilgrimage. He had gone to the town of Tapodan to take the darshan of deity of Lord Krishna there. So when he was leaving the town, on the way he saw 2 bale fruit trees, right? Bale, it's very nice drink in summers. So I've studied in Jamshedpur. We used to have a lot of bale there. So anyways, he saw 2 bale trees on the way. And then because he was tired, he thought, I'm going to take rest under these trees. And he lay down. He used the root of one of the tree as a pillow. And then on the other side of the tree, he put his foot down. So it's like a nice bed he made out of it, resting both his feet and his head. And after some time, what happens is, once he had completed his rest and sleep, he got up and he left. But after he left, those 2 trees, they started to dry up. And within few days, 5 or 6 days, those trees, they completely dried up. And the 2 souls who had been living in those trees, so trees also have soul, by the way. It is also one of the yonis that we have been part of. We have forgotten, that is a different thing. But trees is also yoni. And just imagine the state of a tree, after human birth, they have to just stand and bear the weather and do nothing. So those trees, they started drying up. And then in their next, what happened is those souls, they departed from those trees. And then they were born as 2 daughters of a very pious Brahman in next life. Now, when the girls, they reached the age of about 6 or 7, they went to a pilgrimage to Kashi. And as they were going around Kashi, as the luck would have it, they happened to see the great sage Bharat. And when they saw Bharat Maharaj, they immediately went and fell to his feet. And in their sweet words, they said, "Oh Maharaj Bharat, because of your mercy, we both became freed from the tree form of life." That's what they tell Sage Bharat. And then Bharat Maharaj, he was amused. He heard their statement and he was quite surprised. He said that, how do you come in contact with me? So he called them, my dear daughters, when did you come in contact with me? Because he didn't remember that. And when did I free you from the form of trees? Can you please inform me? And then, because they understood that why he's surprised, so then these 2 girls, they started narrating the stories. So they informed Bharat that, they were trees in their previous birth. And the story goes like this, that, they were, there was used to be a sage in older time, and he was doing his tapasya in a place near river Godavari. His name was Chinnapap. That sage's name was Chinnapap. And at that place, there was a rishi. The place name was Chinnapap, and the rishi's name was Sachatapa. So the girls are narrating the story of their previous lives. And he was performing great austerities, like in hot season, he would sit in between fires, cold season, he would stand in the cold river. And because of that, he gained absolute mastery over his senses. And slowly he started gaining siddhis and progressing spiritually as well. So Lord Brahma started to visit him daily. Because of his austerities, he became happy, and he would visit him daily and ask him questions about the devotional service that he started performing towards Lord Krishna as well. So Lord Indra, being Indra, he started becoming insecure. So whenever somebody starts doing something great in Mrityulok, the first, the person who starts becoming insecure is Indra, because they have eyes on my throne. Because Indra's position, he's the king of celestial abode, so he's a pretty insecure guy. That's what our scriptures say, because he's also afflicted with all the problems that we have. He has anger, jealousy, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, everything. And he's also under the spell of Maya. So he started becoming insecure because of seeing those austerities of this rishi called Sachatapa. So then he got two apsaras, damsels in his kingdom, these two girls, and say, go and become the, become a reason for his downfall, distract him from his the worship that he's doing, because it can actually cause the he may even become so powerful that he may snatch my kingdom from me. So he became very insecure, and because of, on the instructions of Indra, these two girls, he went to that rishi and started to distract him, right? So they dropped their clothes in front of him just so that his worship gets distracted. And rishi, being sage, he understood their intentions, and he took some water in their hand and cursed them. He said, go and you will become two bales tree on the banks of river Ganga. And then immediately the girls, they understood their mistake and they fell on his feet. They said, we were under the instruction of Lord Indra, please forgive us. And seeing their submissive attitude and the contrite that they were showing, the sage said, okay, now that I've already cursed you, but what will happen is when Maharaja Bharat would come in contact with you, that's when you will be liberated from that yoni, particular yoni, not liberated from the cycle of life and death, but you will be out of that tree yoni. And in addition to that, he also blessed them that they will remember their past lives. And that's a story. That's how they could narrate the story to that King Bharat. So, and then they said, when you visited Tapodan, you rested. Those two trees, you rested beneath us. And when you were reciting, and you started reciting the 4th chapter when you were resting there, and by hearing that recitation, we not only became free from that tree life, but we got an opportunity to be born in a family of a devotee, which is this Brahmin. And now we have absolutely no craving for this material world. And that is how they got liberated. And they found finally, and they kept on, like, this is how Vishnu was telling the story to Lakshmi. He said, this is how these two girls recited their history to Bharat Maharaj, and he became very happy. He left for his ashram, and these girls continued to carefully recite this 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita daily, and finally attained devotion to my lotus feet. That's what Lord Vishnu is saying. So this was a quick Mahatmeya of chapter 4. Every chapter has one. We will keep on visiting those as and when we start with a new chapter. So this is the glory or the significance of chapter 4. If we do it with love and devotion, each shloka, each chapter carries a lot of what do you call that, power to give us spiritual spiritual strength. But each chapter uniquely in Padma Puran, it is actually said that if you recite this chapter, this happened, because invariably there is a story related to it as well. So with that, let's get started on our chapter. Now, what is the connection between these chapters? We completed chapter 3, and now we are in chapter 4. So we'll take a quick look at what we can expect in this chapter. So the 3rd chapter ended with Krishna telling to Arjun that you need to nourish your buddhi, which is intellect, and then through that you can conquer lust. And when you need to nourish your buddhi, he further went on to explain, you understand the hierarchy, right? We had a pretty in-depth conversation around that chariot principle. So you understand how you can use your intellect and the faculties that you have. And finally, the goal is to start utilizing your highest most faculty, which is soul, which is asleep right now. And once we wake that up, we can direct our intellect, intellect in turn can direct our mind, and then senses have to follow. They have no choice but to that. So that is where we had chapter 3 end. And in chapter 4, we are going to get into what to nourish our intellect with. What is the food we need to give so that it gets the nourishment that it needs, so that we can get closer to our goal. And the answer is, in simple terms, it's the transcendental knowledge, and that is what we are going to talk about in chapter 4. All right, so then this is the connection, as you can see, between these two chapters. This is something interesting I found. So are you not haven't you experienced bliss from God yet? And this is a video I came across. It is kind of an interesting. Let's look at it. So let's look at what's happening here. There you go. So as you can see, by trying these two bees, even though this looks like a Mission Impossible of Tom Cruise, they are able to unload it, right? So if you haven't, keep trying, don't give up. That's the message. If these bees can do something which seems implausible, we can do that as well. We just need to have that perseverance and tenacity and the belief that is needed to sail over that initial inertia, and then things will start falling in place. In this case, thing fell out of place, which is needed, but for us, it will start falling in place. Okay, so one more story. Okay, a couple of stories today. It's a very interesting concept. I heard it from Swamiji recently. I think in one of his interactions, he was telling it's a very interesting story. And that is where we'll have a bit of a discussion before we get into the deeper part of the shloka as well. Honi. Okay, it's a very important concept. Honi, like in Hindi, they say, right? Honi ko kaun tal sakta hai. What is that honi? And then is it prarabdh? We'll have a discussion on that, a bit of it. Now, this is a story of Janme. Now, Janme was the son of Parikshit, grandson of Abhimanyu, and great grandson of Arjun. So Arjun's son was Abhimanyu, Abhimanyu's son was Parikshit, and Parikshit's son was Janme. So Janme, he went to Vedvyas, who was his guru. He went to Vedvyas, who has written Mahabharata, who documented Bhagavad Gita for us as well. He went to him and asked him that Lord Krishna had descended on earth. And why is it that he did not prevent the war and so much of bloodshed that happened? Right? Like a lot of us would have that question as well in our minds. So why didn't he prevent that? So Vedvyas answered to him that there are things that happen, which is called Honi, or the will of God. Those things will happen no matter what, because God has the big picture and he knows what has to happen regardless. So he said it was Honi, it was meant to happen. So Janme says, no, I don't agree to that. You can actually change that through your Purusharth in the present life. And I don't believe that, it's something that is has meant to happen will anyway happen, the concept of Honi itself. So Vedvyas said, all right, in that case, I'll tell you something. 5 years down the line, don't go out on a white horse. And if you go out on a white horse, at least don't go in the north direction. And if you go in north direction, don't fall for a beautiful girl. And if you fall for a beautiful girl, don't at least get married to her. And if you get married to her, don't at least don't do a Brahma Hatya on her behest. Okay, now that I have told you 5 years from now, and that is a Honi. Okay, you see what you can do about it. So Janmeja, obviously, he was a little pensive hearing that story, but nevertheless, he left and he said, okay, I've got to be really watchful. I will not do that. So as the 5th year started approaching, his urges to ride a horse, they started coming, right? We do have urges. Every now and then we get that urge to do it. Let's just do it. Okay, I'll take care of it. Go for it. So his urges started to, get aggravated. And one of the days he simply called upon his and he said, okay, get me a horse, but don't get a white one. Get me a brown horse today. So he goes, his servant, he goes and he gets a horse for him. And the moment he comes and sees the horse, which is readied for him, the first dhak happens in his heart. It's a white horse. So this guy said that brown horse actually has taken ill, so I couldn't find another one. Now it's a white horse. Now it's like hammer trying to find a nail. He's already having urges to do that. It's like somebody who's been starved for so many days. All of us sees a rasgulla, right? So he said, okay, fine. Even if it's a white horse, I know what all other things I don't need to do. He started riding it. Before he could realize, he had already taken the northern direction, thinking he's going in some other direction. He had taken the northern direction. So he kept on riding, and finally he meets a beautiful girl there. And before he realizes it, he has fallen for her charms. And not just fallen, but he decides to bring her back to his palace and marries her as well. Okay? So before the blink of an eye, this girl has become his queen as well. And when they were having their ceremonies, the Brahmins were not present. The regular ones who would conduct the rituals for the marriage, they were not there. So they called upon their kids or the sons of those Brahmins. So those Brahmin sons were there. And so what happened was, these Brahmin sons, when they looked at this queen, I think she had a bit of a slip of cloth, and because of which they started laughing. So she could not take that. She became upset, and she beckoned the king to go and kill those Brahmins. And on their calling, he actually went ahead and killed those Brahmin sons. And Brahmahatya, pap is, you get leprosy. Okay, that is the pap which is mentioned in our scriptures, that you will become a leper. There are a lot of other paps as well because of which you could, but Brahmatya results in leprosy. But he didn't have to wait for his next life. He became leprosy, started suffering from leprosy in the same life itself. Then it dawned on him, this is what Vedavyas had told me, and see, I couldn't prevent it. He again goes back to him. He said, by the way, this has happened now. Now tell me, how do I get out of it? Vedavyas says, okay, there is a remedy for it. You go and to sage Vaishampai and start listening to Mahabharat. And as you listen to Mahabharat, chapter by chapter, when you listen with faith and devotion, each organ that is suffering, his entire body was in leprosy, it will start getting cured. But I'm telling you, you will still doubt it. So this guy says, okay, this is my only shot at curing myself. So Janmeja, with a great resolve, he goes to sage Vaishampai and start listening to the story of Mahabharat. So by the way, Bhagavad Gita is also part of Mahabharat, which was documented by Vedavyas. So he starts listening with faith and devotion, and one by one, his organs, they start getting cured. Until sage Vashampai comes to describe Bhim, and he says, by the way, how much power Bhim had? He said, how much power? He said he could lift an elephant, and if he would rotate an elephant and swing it, it could actually go and start orbiting the earth like a satellite. And the moment he said that, he started laughing. He said, how is it possible? Okay, so he immediately had a doubt. So sage Vaishampai, he raised his hand, and he had Siddhi, he raised his hand, and immediately an elephant came flying thud down to the ground. And that elephant was actually orbiting the earth, because Bhim, I don't know whether he did it as part of his recreation or otherwise. Actually, there were elephants who would rotate around the earth. That much power Bhim could wield. But as a result, because he could not repose that faith which Vedvyas had told him, his pretty much entire body had cured, but his knee, it was left uncured. And through that, it spread to the rest of his body, and eventually he died. So the point here is, Honi aspect of our lives or this entire universe has to happen. It is different from Prarabdha in the sense, Prarabdha is something that we are born with, but through Purushat, we can influence it. But the Honi aspect of Prarabdha is something nobody can prevent. But to thicken the plot, we will never know whether this part of my life was Prarabdha or Honi. So the best thing is focus on your efforts rather than thinking whether it was a card that was dealt to me, which was a non-negotiable card or a negotiable card, because will of God, we will never come to know. Anyway, so this was a quick story I wanted to narrate. Which basically, why is it hard for us to believe in stories and teachings of scriptures, right? They seem too unreal, too fictitious. And, it's like a monkey carrying a mountain, flying over a sea. So those concepts, kind of do not resonate in our head. Quick discussion before we go deeper into the shloka. Anybody who wants to share their views on that, why it becomes so difficult for us? And the other day, Shamji was saying, is it not mythology? It is not mythology. They're actually real stories and scriptures. If you go read Bhagavatam, Ramayana, Mahabharata, they were actual events that happened and which have been well documented by sages over the years. So let's hear quickly and then we'll proceed further. And what should be the mindset when we hear stories around, some of our scriptures? How should we approach it? Yes, do we have
Yes, we do have a hand raised. Smita ji, Radhe Radhe, Smita
Radhe
Hegde ji.
Smita ji?
Radhe Radhe everyone.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Nitin ji. Just suppose my thought is after 200 or 300 years, if somebody says somebody called Nitin existed, they will not believe because they don't know that humans could exist like two hands, or maybe they could have a different capacity, the humans in the future. Because they don't have proof. So just because somebody did not let a photograph, they didn't leave a photograph, or they didn't leave a proof of or a video, we are not able to believe it.
Very true.
So this is what, this is my thought, and that's why we should accept the things as they are and believe in it, because we are not sure. Even though we are not sure, we should accept that, because we don't have proof, we should not comment on that. That's what I feel.
Yeah, very true. In fact, Swamiji beautifully,
Radhe
Radhe Smita ji, great points. Swamiji, he was telling in one of his lectures, it might be very difficult for you to think it is plausible, somebody is doing that. But he said, my policy is, when he says my policy, maybe in his initial years when he was a spiritual aspirant, is to simply believe it, what our scriptures say. Because we don't have the ability to actually grasp it, or, if we start intellectualizing it, as we have seen in the story of Sati in Ramayana, when she tests Ram Bhagwan. Now, Sati is herself an Shakti of God, right? She cannot be under the spell of ignorance, but to teach us humans that in God's Leelas, if you start intellectualizing it and casting a doubt on it, then it's not good for our spiritual growth. So policy is simply accept it, and then in due course of time, it will make sense. And that faith, Shraddha, and belief will also follow in due course of time. Yes, I can see a couple of other hands. Let's hear, and then we'll proceed further.
Annapurna ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Annapurna ji.
Have you unmuted?
Yes,
Can
you've been unmuted. You can.
Okay. Okay. I think Nitin ji said it. I just wanted to say there are so many things that in Itihasas we hear about, king having 10,000 children, and then, animals, birds talking, and lot of things that we don't see present day in our material world. So I think we wonder about those things. That's what, if you tell youngsters stories about it, they cannot believe that. It is very hard for me, but when we were little, we used to believe like that and understand. But present day generation, they like to know, if we want to tell them. But the first thing I learned after coming to JK Yoga, that we should never ever use intellect in all these divine matters, because they are beyond. And that's why, you can, your material body, this material world, material intellect, you can never comprehend all those things. I think it is just wonderful to believe the way it is told. So on that basis, you can try to understand that even though you wonder 2 plus 2 is 4, instead of that 2 plus 2 is 3, you just believe that 2 plus 2 is 4, think that, and then proceed with other things. That's the first lesson that I learned after coming to JK Yoga, the difference between material world and material body and divine realm. Thank you, Radhe.
Beautiful point, Annapurna ji. Thank you for articulating it really well. Yes, these are concepts which are beyond our grasp at this point for sure, and it will take a leap of faith to understand those. But again, like I talk about scriptures, when you cook rice, you don't go each grain by grain to make sure it is cooked. So when our scripture says something, one thing is tested, and no, it has stood the test of, or the test of time, you can safely assume rest of it is correct as well, especially when it is coming from the depths of somebody as Vedvyas or Tulsidas, they have written it or compiled it. So you can safely assume that yes, some of the things I have myself struggled with some of these concepts. I mean, is it really possible? Our brain cannot fathom a lot of those things. Even Vaman Avatar, when you talk about it, little boy, he actually became so big that in 3 steps he could cover this entire universe. Is it fathomable? No, it is not. But then maybe in due course of time, when we get closer to realization, it'll all start making sense, but it'll not. But then what do? Keep it that doubtful, skeptical mindset towards it, then it's not a great thing for a spiritual thing. Simply accept it as a matter of policy, pending understanding. When it is in due course of time, the light will automatically fall on that topic and it will start making sense. But yeah, some of these things, they are pretty incomprehensible. You may think, okay, is it really possible, really, or is it somebody's figment of imagination? It is not. Actually, what is written in Bhagavatam or scriptures, that is a fact. All right, let's hear from some couple of few other hands and then we'll proceed further.
Sunit ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Yes, Nitin ji, I always explain things through my own experience. Recently in December, I was there at one of the retreat center, and I will not take the name of the organization, and their way of telling about Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, it's very, very different. Like there was Ram, they don't call it a Ravan, they call it, there were 10 Avguns. So while I was sitting there, I was listening, I started listening to them. You know, you will not believe, it varies from person to person, but I understood. Whatever they were telling me, it was not going inside me. I was there physically, but nothing went inside me. So it varies from our faith. So like I believe in these all things, but these things are happened to according to me. So this is what happened with me. This is my real experience, that I didn't hear even a single word there. I spent there 3 days. So this is my learning from December sessions. Radhe Radhe.
No, that's great actually. In fact, this is one of the things Swamiji has very clearly mentioned, I think in Bhagavad Gita and other books as well. When we reduce it to mere allegories, like allegories is like, okay, there was no Ravan, they are talking about 10 Avgun, or there were no real Pandavas or Kauravas, it's all battle is going on in your head, or there were. So these allegories are good for our understanding standpoint, but if we reduce it to mere allegories that they had no relevance to real life events, then it is like trivializing it. That is not the right way. So we have to, like I said, it's not mythology, it is called Itihas Puran, Ramayana and Mahabharata. So mythologies, I don't know, maybe Britishers gave that term, but it is not true myth. It's actually real events that happened. And I'm glad you are not actually just limiting your understanding to, okay, for humans understanding, these 10 gun were named as Ravan and somebody wrote that story. No, they actually existed. There's a big historical reference for Ravan as well. Who was truly Ravan? Ravan Jai Vijay, the whole prasang is there in Bhagavatam. So when God descends, he picks, it's like when somebody comes in a movie, there's a hero, there has to be a villain to glorify the hero. So these people are not ordinary people who are actually chosen by God to be killed by his own hands. Ravan was actually an avatar of Jai Vijay. Right? There were 3 avatars, Hiranyakshar, Hiranyakashyap, Ravan, Kumbhakaran, and there was one more that happened. So they chose to come as villains for 3 lives instead of coming as saints for 7 lives. They said, Mrityu Lok, we have to go. They had a choice because they were cursed by Brahma's son. It's a story. So they were given an option whether you want to go to Mrityu Lok for 3 villains along with God's avatars, or as 7 times saints. So they said, why to go in earth for so long? Anyway, there's global warming and COVID and all those kind of things. We'll go for 3 lives only, and they got done with it. So when they come, they're actually fulfilling the Leela of God as well. They're playing their part. So playing a part of villain for God is also a seva for them. It's a kind of their seva only. And if somebody is killed by God's hands, they're extremely fortunate and privileged. They're not ordinary people, because God's rule is whomever he kills with his own hands, he has to give them their own loka. They are liberated. So typically the liberated souls come to play the role of a villain. But yeah, if we reduce it to only allegorical references, like in a lot of books, lot of translations of Bhagavad Gita, it happens. That's not the right way of looking at it. It is deeper, and these are real stories, not something just for a figment of our imagination to teach us some lesson. No, nothing of that sort. Yes, I can see few other hands. Let's hear.
I see a new hand, so let me take that person. Swati ji, Swati Bankar ji.
Radhe Radhe Swati.
Radhe. I just want to say the third, you said, no, Teen Janma of Jai Vijay. The third was Dantarvakta and Shishupal.
Yeah, Dantarvat and Shishupal. Yeah, I remembered. I forgot that. But it's very true.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for calling that out. By the way, we were talking about finding faults the other day. Even Shishupal could find 100 faults in Lord Krishna. What's a big deal in finding faults in someone? Anybody can find faults in anyone. Thank you so much, Swatiji. Did you want to add anything else to that as well? Or?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I didn't.
no worries.
Yeah.
Let's hear from other. I can see a couple of other hands.
Yes. Padma ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Padma ji.
Our monkey mind, for lifetimes and lifetimes after lifetime, it's so conditioned that we are not willing to apply something that we don't understand. And for us to actually understand, it's a two-step process, right? We want to apply only when we understand something, whatever that is, right? And for us to understand, we need evidence. We need some kind of evidence to convince our mind to say this actually happened, and I can truly believe that. But that evidence might be right in front of us, but we might not be ripened. It's all about time, space, and situation, and where that person is materialistically, where that person is spiritually. So when we are on the spiritual realm, even if the evidence is right in front of you, but you are blinded, it would just pass by, and you would never actually acknowledge that some miracle actually happened, which will show you the proof that God actually exists and the Leelas are true, right? It might not be a mega events that we have to prove to ourselves, like what happens in Mahabharata and Ramayana, but little things does happen in front of us, and we need to have that vision. And it only comes with, I think, God's grace, definitely, number one, right? God's grace, time, space, and situation. When you mature yourself, when the knowledge really matures over a period of time, that becomes the wisdom. And that wisdom, when we are ready, then we are able to apply that and actually see those things happening right in front of us.
Very true. It's wisdom, basically the realized knowledge becomes our wisdom, right? Once it's backed with our own experience. And yes, we do have a tendency not to accept things that do not fit into the model of our own mind and our own world. It's a great thing. And I think we all fall prey to that at different points in our lives. It is very natural for all of us to do that. But yeah, in our scriptures, it's the policy is to just believe it, go from understanding to understanding rather than from doubt to doubt. And in due course of time, God will plant that seed of devotion, which will give you the required faith to start believing that as well, right? We are going to talk about Hanumanji in greater detail when we get to those bhavs, the dasya bhav part of it. But yes, I think with God's grace, that thing will also come. But for now, if it doesn't make sense, simply accept it. That's the best policy to have around these matters. Okay, I can see a couple of other hands. Let's hear from them and then we'll go further.
Shruti ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe everyone. Radhe Radhe Nitin. I just want to ask you that why did God do, like, why did they do all this? Like, why did they have to come and play this role, like God and Ravan, and then kill them? What was it about?
God has a lot of free time, I think. I don't think he has anything better to do, maybe. So we will discuss it in detail. 4.7. Okay, so that shloka is Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata, right? All of us is there. Now we are going to go into that shloka in great detail. Is it truly that God needs to do all this drama to have villains and then do this leela and then kill them and go through all of that he does? So we will discuss that in detail, because God, if it
was it just to say,
yeah,
sorry, continue. No. Was it just to set the template for us humans to follow that path?
Part of it, yes, it's a template. Like if you look at Rama Avatar, Maryada Purushottam Avatar was there, so he gave us a perfect template. Now there also we can find glitches here and there, our monkey mind will tell you, but yeah, part of it is template, and part of it is, that's what we will go in greater detail as we pick up that shloka. So if you look at this chapter, we're going to talk about God, why he takes avatar. So we'll go into great detail into that. But for now, for this discussion's sake, let's understand whenever God, anything that we do, it's not without any prayojan. Prayojan means without any objective. And same is the case with God as well. So when he descends, it is actually fulfilling an objective. And what is that objective when God comes is something we will go in greater detail in 4.7. So I'm going to whet your appetite so that you can hold off on that. And then we'll really get deep into that aspect of it. Why God descends, because God, he permeates this entire universe. If he were to kill Ravan, he doesn't have to do all that. All he needs to do is just get out of his, he's the super soul. If he gets out, Ravan is dead. Or make the water poisonous for him, or make the air bad. He can do so many things. Why does we have to go through that entire Leela? We'll get into that in great detail in 4.7. It's a very valid question, and by the end of that session, let's see if that it brings in more light or not. Okay, anybody else?
Yes, we have Hitalji. Please go ahead, Hitalji. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Okay, I think whether I'm going to make a point is relevant to here, but I think I'm going to say exactly proving the same story as a mythology, right? So we all watch Hollywood movies, right? And we like Hollywood movies. So if you connect Hollywood movie and the real science today, it's happening. So I'm going to connect with a couple of movies. Let's say Back to Future. We watched it a long time back, right? They have a flying cars in there. Now the flying cars is happening, right? So those, it's coming as an imagination, or it maybe came from the literature, right? Same thing with the Contagion. There was a movie. We see the COVID. We see the space movies. A long time before, it's thing happening. And now we go to space. So I see that it's not, a mythology is a proven thing, right? I know it's a template for us as a part of to live our life. But the thing is also at the same time, the Hollywood movies also proving this, it came from the literature. So this is what I'm trying to say, nothing else.
No, good. Thank you. So imagination is the limit, basically, wherever our mind can go. Very true. But yeah, these things are scriptures. If you go to Ramayana, it is one of the most profound scriptures from a knowledge standpoint as well. We have all heard Ramayana purely from a storyteller standpoint. But if you actually go, Swamiji says that Tulsidas Ramayana is one of the literary wonders. How he has written it, how beautifully he has written it, and how profound it is. And the beauty of our scriptures is the Tattva Gyan in Ramayana, and the Tattva Gyan you will see in Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, or Mundukopanishad, Kathopanishad. They are all converging. Okay, so that itself can tell you that it's not written by different authors where they had a different interpretation of the same concept. Everything is converging in all the concepts there. So anyways, I had another wanted to do a deep dive into shloka as well, but I think we will probably run out of time on that, but we'll see how far we can go. But before that, I wanted to play, I think Mamtamanji, you had a video to play. We have a holistic health coming up, and I'll invite Mohitji to talk about it for a few minutes. Let's quickly play that video and then we'll continue with our discussion because there's a little bit of stuff I wanted to cover as well.
So, Nitinji, I would like to share my screen if you can.
Yes, I'm going to stop share for a minute and hand it over to you.
Okay, we do have a beautiful session that's coming up. So there is a quick video we'll play. I will play it now.
Wonderful. It has gotten me excited for sure. If I'd known it, I would have given you my before and after as well, Mohitji. So why don't you tell us a bit about this program that's coming up?
Wonderful. Thank you, Nitinji, Amrutamaniji. Thank you. Radhe Radhe, everyone. So I'm a volunteer at the Radhakrishna Temple or JK Yoga here in Dallas as well. And one of the things I've realized a little while ago is, and as we learned in Nitinji's class, that this vessel is very, very important, right? And the idea of having this class came to me during one of Swamiji's lectures where he said, some of our satsangis focus a lot on kirtan. Some of our satsangis focus a lot on physical health. But to be quite honest, there's the holistic health aspect that is completely described in our Vedic literature. And Swamiji has all the resources that he has put together in different books. So the idea of this session is to give you an overview of what it is that JK Yoga and the Radhakrishna Temple can offer. We have, being a spiritual organization, we have lots of classes that I know many of you attend to get the sadhana and the spiritual knowledge. But this is going to focus a little bit more on the other elements, specifically physical fitness, asanas, nutrition for that matter. There were 2 sets of photos in there, so hopefully Ajayji will join us too, but there'll be 3 of us that will talk about our physical journeys. So maybe you saw it in that first photo on the left-hand side. About 5 years ago, I used to be about 50 pounds heavier, and I'm a pretty small guy. But ever since I got the right knowledge, I was able to implement it with the right purpose that the Vedic literature tells us about. So you'll hear a lot of stories, you'll get examples, you'll be able to hear how JKO can help further. So this course starts next week, Monday, and it's essentially Monday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday. It starts at 7 a.m. Central, and it's $25 for the whole thing. And it's for the family. The fee goes to the Radhakrishna Temple. It doesn't go to me. This is all on a volunteer basis, but there's a lot to learn and a lot to share. So we're excited about it. Hopefully you guys will register. Radhe Radhe.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mohitji. Really sounds very exciting actually. And I'm really glad we are getting that holistic health viewpoint, right? Because this body is the vehicle that will help us go from point A to point B. And I'm really looking forward to this program. See, the only time I have achieved some weight loss is by cutting my hair. Okay, so
I can't do that anymore, so that's not an issue. And by the way, Amruta Maniji is going to be our co-host, so you get to see her bright smile there. So you have to join for that at the very end.
It's an additional incentive for all of you to go join. So I know it, I always tell 80% of the people join to see Amruta Maniji's smile. So there you go.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we do have this. There are questions, Mohitji. So is it online or in person? It's like we have it for both online and in person.
It's all online, 100% online. It's not going to be recorded for obvious reasons. This might be something we expand on. This is something I'm very passionate about because I struggled with weight most of my life. Once I understood the purpose, I wanted the purpose of human life. I wanted to make sure that I was using this vessel appropriately with the right ways. And Swamiji has a book on this, the science of healthy diet. So we're going to be taking extracts from that and talking about that book. But it's all virtual, so you should be able to join. And it is available for participants in India for 500 rupees. And it's not a per person. I don't know if I said this, I forget. It's per family. So 500 rupees, you're able to register.
So Wonderful. I've just posted the, sorry to interrupt. I've just posted the link, and if you can see, I've shared my screen also. So this is the thing. So it's like 4 days in 2 weeks. Sorry, yes, 2 days per week. So you can go there, you can register in US or India. So, and it's at 7 p.m. So I think it's 6:30 a.m. in India time. So I think it's a good time there also. So please do register for it. It has been posted. The link has been posted. So
yes, please do avail this wonderful opportunity. And Mohitji is a wonderful facilitator. I'm sure he would have done a lot of his groundwork, and you'll be amazed to see how much preparation he puts in, and even the smallest of things that he works on. So look forward to that, Mohitji. Wonderful.
Thank you. One quick question. What is the duration of each session? So it's from 7 to 8:15?
Yeah, it's roughly an hour actually, but the last 15 minutes are mostly for Q&A.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So I think there are many comments saying that they're really excited. So
yeah,
and
please
they're
sign
happy
up.
that it's available to India also. That's what is like.
But see, COVID, everything is available online these days. So that's going to make it easy for everyone. So great.
Thank you.
All right. What we'll do is we will continue with our this thing, because I haven't covered on the shloka too much today. We'll cover that in the subsequent session, but we can have a discussion just a little bit more on this topic, and I'll bring in a few more perspectives around it, some of the leelas as well. Let's hear if we have any participants who have anything more to add before we go.
Yes, I see Samji's hand raised.
Please fill out the feedback tracker as well in the meantime.
Samji, please go ahead.
Yes, Samji, Radhe.
Radhe, I was just asking that which days and what times I forgot to note it down.
Yes, I can tell you just, it's on Monday and Thursday. That is Feb 7th. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Starting in February 7th, right?
Yes, Feb 7th is the first class. That
Feb
is at
7th,
7 p.m.
Feb
10th,
14th and the 17th.
14th, Feb 17th. 7, 10, 14 and 17.
And that's for 1 month or how long?
No, it's just the 4 sessions. It's all, only
just
the 4
4
sessions. Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
And $25
4
for the whole
sessions,
family?
$25 for the whole family.
Okay.
And it's 500 rupees, Indian rupees. Yes.
I see. Got it. Thank you.
4 sessions, $25, 50 pounds. Okay. You can note down the numbers.
That is guaranteed, right? Money back guarantee?
I should add, by the way, there's 2 free yoga sessions with Devi Ji virtually available for this as well. I missed saying that. That will happen.
You'll get a couple of shloka sessions free, Bhagavad Gita sessions.
So what will they be doing? They will be doing some asanas and all those things, or just lectures, or they will be showing some postures?
It's less about the asanas, but more about the knowledge and then actual practical implementation, insights, and personal stories. There'll be recipes and a lot of other things that are shared, sattvic recipes and whatnot.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the fact you showed avocado there. Okay, that's something I could. Wonderful. Great. So with that, anybody who had any questions, because I think we'll not be able to do justice to the remaining content given the time that we have. So if anybody wanted to add anything or had any questions, I will be happy to take that since we still have a few more minutes left.
Don't see any hands raised.
Okay, somebody is going to raise their hand as a lifesaver, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll just read a comment.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Jyotiji.
Thank you, Jyotiji.
Okay, I'll just read a quick comment.
Sure.
No, sorry, it's not this one. Yeah, Joanji was saying for this, in answer to the question, I believe that because we cannot perceive these things and situations with our eyes, we cannot believe it.
Very true. Yeah, very true.
So
That's,
yeah,
it's not easy actually, especially if you have not gone into the depths and we have not developed some level of faith and understanding. It's difficult. Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, gone through that similar journey. Yes,
go ahead,
Jyotiji.
Jyotiji. Radhe Radhe Jyotiji, you've been unmuted.
Radhe Radhe, Amritvani ji and Nitin ji. I couldn't leave you hanging there, right?
I know that.
I had to
Thank
come.
you so much. Thank you so much for that.
I'm playing with you. So the thing that goes through my mind is that if you look at the recent history, we think that science is evolving and now we are much better than we were in the past 100 years. But what we don't realize is that the downloads that we do from the server, our sages used to do the same downloads directly from the Bhagwanji directly, and these scriptures hold all the truths that we are not able to decipher because we don't have that intellect to be able to understand that. If we had, we would be able to understand Aryabhats and Bhaskaracharya or Acharya Kannad, and who were very, very, very even greater than Einstein or anybody else, Newton, anybody else that we can think of in their fields. And part of it is the language barrier. Part of it is the fact that our intellect is not good enough. And if you think about it, our scriptures actually talk about Pushpavahan coming. So they were airplanes. And Parikshit Maharaj, even before he was born, he was actually attacked by a nuclear weapon. And Krishna Bhagwan came to his rescue while he was still in the womb of Uttara. And if you think of Abhimanyu, while he was still in the womb of Subhadra, he was able to hear the Chakravyu. And until recently, we did not know that while you're pregnant, the child can hear the noises, the sounds that are going outside, or can sense the mood of the parent. So some of these things that we think are mythology or too too great to understand, we think that must be make believe, and that is the failing that happens.
Beautiful points.
Radhe Radhe.
So many beautiful points you brought out, Jyoti ji. Very nice. In fact, Bhagavatam, if you in the Bhagavatam itself, Shukadev Maharaj actually recites it to Parikshit ji. And Shukadev ji, he did not come out of his mother's womb. He was Vedvya's son, by the way, for 12 years, for fear of getting under the grip of Maya. So when he came out, he was already a 12-year-old. And when he came out, he simply walked off, did not even look at his mother, father. He just walked off to the forest because he was so scared of coming under, even though he was a Paramhans, obviously it's a Leela, he did not want to take that chance. So he just came in as a 12-year-old grown-up boy. Can we imagine that? No, right? So, but these are the kind of things. Saubari Muni, right? He could convert himself through his power of tapa, austerity that he has accrued, into a young man. And we have seen that how they would do that. So these things seem implausible, but they are facts. These people they had that power. Arjun, Brahmastra, we say, I think it is something similar to, not similar to, maybe even more powerful than the nuclear weapons that we have of today. Cloud seeding technology, where they could have that rain ban, and also all those things are mentioned there. Might be hard to believe, but the policy is just believe it, because it will, in due course of time, it will make sense. So yes, I can see a couple of other hands. Let's conclude our discussion for today, and then we will continue with our discussion. By the way, tomorrow we are going to discuss an interesting topic, allodoxaphobia. Okay, you can search it up, look it up. It's an interesting phobia. We all suffer from it, and we'll discuss about it tomorrow, because Tuesday session we try to go into some topic. It's more like a supplemental session. We'll get into that topic. But let's hear from Simaji, and then we'll conclude our session today.
Yes, before that, tomorrow we do have Swamiji's exclusive session at 9:45 a.m. CST.
SMX.
So it's just a reminder, SMX session. So those who have not registered, so please do register for that. Simaji, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, everyone.
Radhe Radhe, Simaji.
People don't believe because they don't have Shraddha, faith, and that these siddhis do happen. We also have that capability if we can reach up to the level of the 7th chakra and Kundalini, and finally the enlightenment. If we're like Swami Vivekananda said, if one person can attain it, others can too. There were a lot of things that we did not believe could not happen, and they have materialized. So having the faith, to me, faith comes from bhakti, and we currently in this day and age, we want proof of everything. If we don't see it with our eyes, it just didn't happen. But miracles do happen, and the current age doesn't like to call it miracles. They call it coincidences. So yes, they do happen. I believe in that. Thank you.
Very true. Great point, Simaji. That's true. In fact, in one of the sessions, we will talk about the different siddhis that we can experience, especially if we are willing to put in the required effort in the sadhan, bhakti that we do. These are a byproduct of your progression on this trajectory, and you have to keep on discarding them. not getting hung up on them. And there are different stages for that as well. Maybe in one of the sessions, we'll talk about that as well as the levels of bhakti. Great discussion. With that, we come to the end of today's session. We will continue with this conversation. We are yet to do a deep dive discussion on the shloka. So I look forward to continuing with this conversation. Please fill out the feedback tracker in the meantime. And all the best, Mohitji, with your upcoming session. I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful session. So do avail that opportunity as well. Let's do anything, Amritamaniji, from your side?
A quick comment. Lakshmi Prasannaji says, I think as blind person cannot see things, but sure that they feel it. So we, though cannot see, should believe or feel them.
Great point. Very true. See, we are handicapped when it comes to our material senses. From 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz is our range. It doesn't mean anything less than 20 hertz doesn't exist, or more than 20,000 hertz doesn't exist. Same thing, our scales that we can see, right? Optical is also limited. We cannot capture the phenomena of refraction because something will appear bent to us, even though it might not be. So the proof part that we talk about, if you think deep enough, what kind of proof are you looking for? Our scriptures tell us if you need proof of God, there is a process. You follow it. If you don't see the proof, reject it. Are we willing to follow the process is the question. So proof, is there a proof of clarified butter in milk? No, by naked eye, you cannot. If somebody says it exists, and then there is a process to see that. Similarly, the proof of God, if somebody is really of a logical temperament, rational temperament, then there is a process to see the proof also. You follow the process. If you don't see God, then reject it. So yes, it's basically not thinking it to a level which is needed to actually grasp this topic. But if we simply scratch the surface and say, I don't believe it, it's nothing but a bigger leap of faith that somebody is taking just because we are not able to understand it. We think it doesn't exist. So that is how it is. Okay. Any other announcements, Amrita Maniji, or we can do our closing prayers for the day?
Yes, we can do the closing prayers.
Okay, wonderful. Please fill out the feedback tracker in the meantime, and let's do our closing prayers for the day. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day and a great rest of your evening. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, everyone. Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Nitinji. Thank you, Mohitji.
Thank you, everyone.
I will be closing the bridge now. Thank you, everyone.